This time I'm going to tie the heavyweight version of the grey shrimp, the one that's in my book Masterclass. Shrimps, as you probably know, are an absolute must for chalk streams. Most chalk streams have billions of shrimps in them. It's probably, weight for weight, it's probably the most prevalent food form in chalk streams. I say heavyweight because the standard shrimp, the one with the body weighted with lead strips cut from lead foil, isn't heavy enough to get down into the deep swirling runs of, for instance, these deep hatch pools that you get on chalk streams. So this one's going to be a real hatch pool buster. It's going to get really down there deep. So I'm tying it again on the size 12 hook, the curved grub hook, Partridge K4A. First thing obviously is to mash down the barb, and to lead it this time I'm going to use these tungsten sleeves, these tungsten nymph sleeves, and I'm using the medium weight ones because, sorry, not the medium weight, the large ones. You know that tungsten, of course, is twice as heavy as lead, so for little space take up, I'm going to get twice the amount of weight. So when you heft this in your hand, you can feel that it's far, far heavier than you're going to get with a normal leaded shrimp. What you've got to do is to build up the shank with tying thread, and also it helps to make good adhesion. So just in the area where the tungsten bead is going to go, tungsten sleeve is going to go, using any thread. I happen to have power silk handy, which is probably a bit of a waste of an expensive thread, but just build up an area there with thread and keep checking by just sliding the sleeve on. Keep checking that it's a tight fit. Well, when I say tight fit, it's got to just push over and be a snug fit is probably a better expression. So that one's now to be tied off. I made 2 more passes. Just throw on 2 whip finish and snip off the waist at both ends. And now to secure this sleeve in place, I'm going to use super glue. Be careful when you're using this stuff though, because any excess onto skin, and I suppose you know what the consequences are, you'll get yourself well and truly stuck down. So just push that over. Doesn't give you a long time to position it, a few seconds, and that's it. Now you can see that I've got a sharp step down at the front and a sharp step down at the back. Don't worry about it. I know it doesn't look very pretty at this stage, but the dubbing's going to pad this out. Right, the first thing to go on is on with your tying thread, and I'm using spider web. Starting at the front and go over your tungsten sleeve, off at the back, over at the front again. Just lock it over a few times, and then trim off your waist. Just knock that off. Now tip the hook slightly on its head, because I'm going to be working round the corner. Take your tying thread right down to a position more or less in line with the eye, and then you want your nylon rib to go in. £2 or £3 mono is ideal. Just nip it in your teeth so you get some little jimps as it'll hold, and tie that in. And then what I do, I run that over the top and catch it down there. You can pull that through if you like. And then what I do is take that tag back and lock it down at the back so it's double locked for added security. And if you pull on it, you'll check that it's tight. I just usually give it a pull. And then you can just snip off that little bit of waste. Now lash that down, work it a little bit to the underside. Come to a position more or less in line with the eye, so well round the bend. So from a partridge, one of these grey partridge neck feathers, tweak one out, just strip off the lower fibres and take out a nice clump of, let's say, 7, 8 or 9 fibres. Offer them in. Now you don't want a big overhang like 1/2 inch, all you want is about 1/4 inch of tails. Hold them in place and just catch around with a soft wrap. And tie down, tie down, tie down, right to where you tied the rib down. So there's your little tail tuft. Don't bother cutting that, just tether it down. Now bring your tying thread back to this end. Just set the hook up on its nose slightly. Take off another clump, less number this time, probably 5 or 6, or 4 or 5, it doesn't really matter, don't count them, just a clump. But tie these in long, twice as long as the tails at least. And I sometimes, if it doesn't happen automatically, I sometimes coax a few fibres to the bottom and a few to the top. Looks a little bit more natural. And then also tie those butts down. Now sit it back on its head, ready to come to work at this back end again. And now I'm going to put the shell back in. Take the tying thread right down to the base of the tails. Now for the shell back using grey flexibody. There's your flexibody sheet. If you haven't got grey, clear is perfectly acceptable. And the shape I'm cutting out is the shape of, roughly the shape of a rowing boat. You don't need a template. It's got to go from there all the way over the top down to there. So make sure that it is long enough. So a nice, smooth, symmetrical rowing boat shape. So there's your piece of grey flexibody. Peel off the translucent plastic from the backing strip. Offer this up, keep it flat, not on its side, keep it flat, and tie that in flat on top with that little tying in tag and catch it down. Catch it down, catch it down, catch it down. Right back to the base of the tails and test it. Make sure it's in, give it a pull. So now I've got tails in, antenna in, shell back and rib in. Everything tied in now. Bring my tying thread to the front. Just run over the tungsten sleeve. And now I'm ready to dub. Get your dub in. This is Masterclass Finesse River and Stream Blend MC14, sort of a greyish watery olive. Because this hook is bending downhill and the eye is also sloping down, it's of benefit now just to throw on a 1/2 inch or a couple of whips just behind the eye. That just stops your thread all dropping off the front. Now you're ready to dub. Pick up your dubbing and just start teasing it forward and spinning it onto the thread. Avoid pills, you don't want any pills, and you can put this on reasonably heavy. Spin it on. This pattern's going to fairly eat dubbing, and remember in this area here, just call that the shoulders and that the back end. I'm going to have to taper that down with dubbing, so there's going to be some fairly heavy applications of dubbing in a localised area there. Shorten your working thread and now simply dub backwards now from eye going back towards the bend. And at that point there where the where the shoulders of the tungsten saddle is, you have to work on the spot there to even that out. And just tighten that in a bit more. And now onto the tungsten sleeve or saddle and go along. Come along, come along, come along. And you can see it is eating dubbing. I'm going to put a bit more dubbing on, tip that up on its head, and a little bit more dubbing on. And now I've dropped off onto the bare hook shank. Just got a little bit of a bump there to dub out. So I need a touch more dubbing still. Any pills you see, just with your thumb against the ball of your finger, just tease them out. And now dub out now to where the start of the flexi body is. It's about there, and slough off the rest. When you get to the end, just make a couple of turns and then throw on a spinning loop. Take off sufficient for you to handle. It's no use making short spinning loops. Make a nice long one over your finger, back to where it came from, round twice, so you can see the dubbing loop is now open. There's a gap there. Down there there's a gap. Now that won't hold anything, so you go over with your thread, over the two arms, and draw them together. Now I've made that come to a tight V. So that's your dubbing loop completed. And now you take your tying thread all the way through the dubbing, all the way back to the head of the shrimp. And when you get up there, drop on, I'll just turn it slightly in the jaws. When you get up to the front, throw on another half hitch or a couple of whips. Again, to stop it diving off. And now I'm ready to make the legs. So what I do is I get 5 grey partridge breast feathers. Look for partridge hackles that have got these fairly square ends, sort of flat at the ends. So I'm taking off about 5. And it doesn't matter from which side, as long as you don't get any with much of a chestnut bar. You can get these light coloured ones as well, they look rather good. 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is what you do. You strip away the lower fibres and get 5 feathers ready like that. And what I do when I'm tying a batch of these, I get all this preparatory work all out of the way before I start tying. So I get myself, if I'm doing half a dozen, I get myself 30 or 35 feathers all stripped ready. And 5. Right, so there are my five feathers all prepared. So what I've got to do is, to stop these feathers slipping about, I've got to anoint them with tacky wax. I used to use head cement at one time, and I can do it with head cement, but for people that are not used to it, doing this spinning loop, the cement will dry before you get the feathers in. So if you can get this stuff, tacky wax, that's better. What you have to do is treat this dubbing loop, both legs of the dubbing loop, with tacky wax. This is brilliant stuff. It's really, really sticky. So you put reasonable deposits of this tacky wax on. If you see any lumps, of course, take them off. It's a great boon to fly tying is this stuff. I stick those 2 fingers in, they open it, and that finger, my index finger, closes it. So it's open, close, open, closed, open, closed. Take a feather, open it, take it right down to there, close to make contact, pull back to set the length. You want about 5 or 6 millimeters at that side. Do that again. Feather number 2, going down. Trapped. Feather number 3, going down, pull back, and trapped. Feather number 4. This is dead easy to do. There's no sweat, no panic. You don't have to let sweat come on your brow. And number 5 going in. Open it, pull along, pull back. So you're looking for even tips along there. More or less even. Now you've got to keep the loop tightly closed. So both sides of the feather now is trapped by this sticky thread. As near as possible to the thread, you snip off the waist side. And you go all the way along, just hold your counsel, snip, 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 all the way along. There's all your tips. Get your dubbing whirl, hook your dubbing whirl in, hook that in there, that through there, like that. Drape it over your finger. You've had tension on this all the time, and spin. And as the twists come on, push them forward. Feed them forward like that. Still spinning like hell, look. Don't spin too much. You can spin that much that you'll pop this thread. As soon as you've got this nice chenille of single fibres, stop. But among there, you've got the 5 original tips of the feather. So there's 1, tweak it out. There's another tip, that's 2. There's a tip there. That's 3. There's a tip 4. And that's 5. Now you've got a chenille of complete tips. Just give it another little spin for luck. Don't spin it too tight. Remember, you're dealing with spider web. 2 strands of spider web. So now I can treat this exactly like a hackle. Leave your dubbing whirl in. Just pull it deeply into the dubbing. As you pull in deep, it will stand the fibres up at right angles. All these little fibres. And 5 partridge hackles gets you nicely to the front. See how they're all sort of folding and sticking up. And it's these on the underside, so try not to get these trapped on the underside. And I just sort of push back like that. Use the actual loop to push fibres back. And that's the last turn going underneath and coming up on top of the eye. So that's your nice little chenille of shaggy legs done. And now what you do is you simply shorten your working thread and tie this off using your original spiderweb that's on your bobbin. And you just tie down, lob that over, tie down, lob over. The last thing you want is this to escape, so with spiderweb you can afford quite a lot of turns. And then 2 or 3 more consolidating wraps. And now simply detach the waist of the dubbing loop. Now, for safety now, you must secure this with a couple of whips or half hitches at this stage, because you don't want this to slip off the front. Remember, it's a curved grub hook and it's all sloping downwards. The last thing you want is this to slip off and this to come undone. What you have to do now is, having got these lovely single tapering fibres of partridge in, you've got to make use of them all. So I stroke them down and coax them to all sort of hang downhill. Just pulling them down. And now I'm ready to shell back. So there's your shell back. Pull your shell back over. See that little bit of extra excess there? That's for me to get hold of like that. Don't be tempted to tie it down there like that, because if you do, every time you rib, you stretch the material and you'll get a lump chasing you forward, so that by the time you get here at the front, you'll have a blister like that. So don't do that. You've got to rib progressively. Pull that shell back over, bring your rib round, chicane it through the legs, don't trap your legs, climb on top. This first segment is always the worst. It's a slippery medium itself, and it's biting into this slippery flexi body. So having got your first turn round, you're home and dry. On the first one, I always give it a real good pull to deform it and make it bite in. Centralise your shell back all the time. Do watch that it's central. Remember, radial tension will want to bring it to the side that you're pulling from. So you might just have to steer it there with your thumb. In my case, it'll want to bring the shell back over towards me. So you have to keep looking on top and making sure it's 50-50. When you go on the underside with your rib, make sure by waggling it through the fibres and chicaning a bit that you don't trap any down. You don't want them lashed to the underside, they want to be there prominent. Just wiggle it about and make a path. Make sure also you don't get a doubling at that edge there. Keep pulling on the flexi body. And now I'm just about on the tungsten, or directly over the tungsten bead, so I can give it some welly there. And now definitely I'm on the tungsten bead. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to sit this right way up. In fact, I'm going to sit it slightly head up. Keep pulling on that tag, keep it tight, keep checking that it's central, and check that side that you don't get a flap turned up. Pull every time you make a rib to deform the shell back, so you get these nice segmentations. Split the legs with the mono rib. And now this next rib is going to dive off the front of that tungsten bead. So I don't need to pull so tight now, because all I've got underneath is dubbing as a padding. Keep that tag straight and pulled. Is that looking like a crustacean, or is that looking like a crustacean? Voila! Pull it tight, and now lock off. Bring your tying thread over. Now simply lock over your nylon rib with your tying thread, with your spider web. Try not to take legs with it if you can help it. And lock over several times. Remember, this is essentially nylon to nylon. Spider web is a monofilament, and your rib is a monofilament, so don't think 2 or 3 turns is going to hold you here. You want a lot of turns, because this has a habit of slipping out if you're not careful. So plenty of turns on there. Tether it well down. Fish won't mind if it sees a little bit of a head. And when you're happy that it's tied off well, snip off your waist. And then simply come through with a 3 or 4 turn, or 5 turn, or 6 turn, or 7 turn whip finish. All together, fingers out, pull through, job's a good one. Take your scissors, Hook on your hackle pliers onto that tag. Pull that tag quite tight, hook your blade under, nip, snip and tear, snip and tear. Okay, there's a few fibres there that I'll just clean away. A good tool for doing that is my cauterizer. Obviously mind you don't touch the thread, because this doesn't take prisoners. Two last jobs to do before you commit it to your box. What I do, I just go along with my pliers and just give it a lateral press in. You're not going to flatten it much where the tungsten sleeve is, obviously, because you can't crush that down. I just flatten it where the dubbing is at each end, not too much, and press it as tight as you can where the tungsten sleeve is. And then head cement, just seal over that head. And that's it. That'll do some damage in a hatch pull with that, I'll guarantee it.